All right. All right. Thank you everyone for being here today. We really appreciate it. We wish it were under better circumstances, but you know, this is the world we live in. So we're going to make the best we can of it. I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce the panel that we have here today for our Navigating the Surge panel. First, we have Dr. Michael Miller. He's a healthcare and science expert. We have Nancy Thomas, co-founder and proprietor of Mezzi Bistro and Bar in Williamstown. The Human Resources Director of Tourists, Emily Helms, and Billy Joe Egan of Eli's Mile High Club from Oakland, California. So Billy, you're probably the only one not suffering the 17-degree weather today. So
did we lose Billy?
Oh, there he is. He like dropped off. Okay.
Yeah, here he's coming back again. Okay.
Great. So we're going to start with Michael. Michael's going to talk to us a little bit about the sort of current situation with COVID and sort of what's coming down the pipeline.
Thanks, Nico. I'm going to share some slides and be very brief here. If I can figure out how to share slides. Share screen and find this and share, and then do that and do this. Does that work for everybody? Everybody see that? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, it started. It wasn't at the beginning. Sorry. So I'm going to talk very briefly about what returning to normalish looks like. I've been giving these talks for about 18 months now to a bunch of different groups about where things are going in COVID. And this is a very abbreviated version and very quick. And so we can leave time for Q&A. A little bit of intro on me, what normalish looks like, some metrics to think about, what this means for businesses, employees, and customers, and the timing, and then a lot of time for Q&A. So basically, I grew up in New England. I moved back here a little over 2 years ago. Like I said, I've been doing policy and advocacy work. I'm a solo consultant. I'm not employed by any big healthcare system or big company, but I've worked with a lot of different groups. And the last thing is, I'm not here to provide medical advice. Everybody should have their own primary care clinician to ask questions and help them guide their healthcare. So returning to normalish. What does normalish look like? Really what I'm talking about here is everybody's been talking about the pandemic of COVID-19 illness, but it means getting to something where the SARS-CoV-2 virus is endemic. And we've got something called effective control, because it's pretty clear we're not going to get to real herd immunity. I can talk about that in the Q&A, what that means. But effective control is going to look something like what we've got with influenza, where we've got about 35,000 deaths per year, which roughly is 100 deaths per day. Although, of course, with influenza and probably with COVID, it's going to be seasonal. I put this slide in here just to remind people what vaccines do and don't do. Vaccines don't give you an Iron Man suit protection. People get infected with the virus. Doesn't mean you get sick. It's unclear how well you can transmit it, but it's different than what's called sterilizing protection. Vaccines don't do that. Key metrics for getting back to normalish. First one is healthcare system capacity. It's not strained, it's not scorched. They can take care of other people for other things besides COVID, which is right now, and as we've seen in the past, a real problem. The vaccine rates and immunity relate to this, but I don't want to focus on that. The thing I do want to note is we're going to have a test for determining whether somebody's got reasonably good immunity against the virus, and it's called correlative protection. We've got that for other infectious diseases like measles, mumps, rubella. And then testing, it's easy and available, and treatments are easy and available. There are these 2 new pills that got approved, or well, one's approved, one's emergency use authorized. They're being manufactured, but they're not really available because they're still in short supply. And then what's the cases of significant COVID-19 disease, people getting sick? That means effective control. Clearly we're a long way from there. And the metric that's missing from this is just the number of positive cases, positive test results, which is something a lot of people are still focusing on, but I think we're moving away from that as being relatively important, because I said before, the vaccination or immunity doesn't give you sterilizing. You can still have a positive test and not get sick. So what does society do in this normalish environment? Well, the public health and the healthcare system do things like making the tests and the treatments and PPE available. And also public health continues to promote vaccinations. There should be some concern that we're going to have other infectious disease reemerging, like measles. 2 years ago, we had a measles outbreaks in the United States that people were very concerned about. That was the fall of 2019, right before COVID. And there's been a drop off in vaccination rates for things like measles that has a lot of public health people concerned. What do people do in a normal society? Well, they go out and do things. A lot of risk averse people who aren't traveling, aren't eating in restaurants. In this normalist world, they will start doing more of that. People who have illnesses are still going to, and risk. I think there's going to be higher mask wearing in society. That has been something that in other countries, particularly in Asia, has been the norm. If you've got a risk factor or you're sick, people wear masks. The other thing is, I think we're going to see more of a focus on people who are ill not coming to work. There's been this whole ethos in the US, oh, you got a little cold, go to work. What happens is you got a cold, you go to work, you get other people sick, whether it's COVID or something else. And what companies are doing, will be doing in normal societies, a more enhanced than pre-COVID in protecting employees and customers. And that's really going to depend on the company, what the business, what they're doing, the environment they're in, the service they're providing. This is just a quick little cartoon because I want to illustrate that it's not like we're just got to break through this wall and everything's going to be back to normal. It's going to be a constantly evolving situation. I used a slide first a year ago because the focus up until December of 2019 was, or I'm sorry, December of 2020 was we just got to get those vaccines and then we'll be done. And that clearly wasn't the case. So the timing can depend on all those metrics I said, and I'll cut to the bottom line here, which I left blank because I didn't want to even put it in print because it's a projection. But without another variant of concern after Omicron, which I don't think we're going to have, but there's a lot of controversy around that assumption, is sometime between March and June. I think we're going to be getting to a normalish state and maybe even better than where we were like last August, September. And then getting better since then. This is my conclusions, which I'm just going to skip over because it repeats everything I've said. But I will note that for businesses and schools, ventilation and sort of their protocols are going to be important for what we're going to be doing to maintain effective control. And then I just want to say thank you to everybody. And this is a friend of mine's daughter who just got her vaccination wearing her My Little Pony mask. This was a few months ago. But also during the Q&A, if you want to talk about how to talk to vaccine or mask resistant people or misinformation, just disinformation, I'm more than happy to do that. And that's my time. And I will stop sharing if I can figure out how to do that. Oh, somebody did that for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. So yeah, we're gonna have a Q&A basically once all the presenters are done. So feel free to either put your questions in the chat, or if you just want to like hang on to them till the end, you can do either way. So next up, we have Emily Helm, who is the Director of Human Resources at Tourists, and she's going to talk a little bit about the HR perspective of the pandemic.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to start by giving you a little background on who I am and what I do. So my name is Emily, and I am the Human Resources Partner at Tourists in North Adams. As some of you may know, Tourists is a full-service hotel and riverside retreat. They operate a hotel as well as a restaurant and cocktail lounge called the Airport Rooms. And within the organization, they are managing quite a large amount of departments. That includes food and beverage, arts and excursions, housekeeping, maintenance, and administration. My background falls in many years of operations management in the hospitality industry, and I now work with Empowered Hospitality, which is a firm that specializes in HR for hospitality businesses like hotels and restaurants. So I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about what Tourists has done so far to navigate this surge, and then give you a little insight on what human resources are out there for you, and what I would suggest for all businesses kind of navigating during this time. So tourists took a very serious approach to COVID. They are probably more strict than other businesses in the area in that they do require vaccines for all of their staff, as well as all guests at the moment. They have not seen any change in terms of reservations or staffing because of this decision. So overall, it's been a really positive outcome. All of their indoor spaces were closed from March 2020 to May 2021. So during that time, they were operating with in-room services only and really robust kind of outdoor opportunities for guests to have reservations at a fire pit or do outside socially distanced activities. Since then, they have reopened the indoor spaces with the vaccine requirements. And a part of this process has been developing really robust policies to share with guests and employees before their visits and before their trips to work. So they did create a website that is actually available for all of their guests to view before checking in. It's called touristcheckin.com. And basically what it is a way for tourists to go through their policies with their guests before they come to the hotel, so they understand what's expected from them in terms of their vaccination policy, their guidelines for social distancing, for in-room visits, etc. I wanted to touch on policies in particular today. I do think that in my field, it's something that we come across the most, which is meeting with businesses who need assistance with creating a policy or communicating a policy to the public or to their staff, knowing where to turn for those resources and what to do in terms of mandates or required things to include. So I think overall, it seems like businesses, especially in Massachusetts, need more free resources for templates for creating policies across their business. I know that there are policies that have been developed that are very strict and are made for environments that serve healthcare workers. Those are available for free through OSHA. You can take those policy templates and adapt them for your own business and, maybe remove parts that don't apply specifically to you, but see guidelines for information that would be applicable. In addition to that, there are some free resources online from different HR agencies or recruiting agencies. One thing that my firm does is create policy templates for businesses to use. Those templates will include things like what to do if you have an exposure in the workplace. What does it mean to be fully vaccinated at this time? Those things are changing constantly. At this time, we know that the requirement for someone who is exposed to COVID, who has been vaccinated, is a lot different than what we thought it was originally. In addition to that, COVID vaccine guidelines are changing constantly. We want to be able to communicate the booster requirements. So I think having a really clear template for your company to use and putting that policy somewhere public for everyone to see, whether that's your website or maybe a special separate website, that will be really helpful in, pursuing any requirements that you have. The last thing I wanted to note is that there are some resources for paid sick leave in Massachusetts that has to do directly with COVID emergency sick leave. There is a program in place, if you're not already familiar, that provides 40 hours of sick leave that will be paid to your employees and also is optional for reimbursement. So the process is very easy. And I'm happy to explain this further if anyone has specific questions, or we can provide maybe a link to the instructions through the Chamber of Commerce. But there are options for you to provide additional sick leave to what already your business provides and to be reimbursed for that time. And I think I will leave it there and look forward to answering some questions from everyone after this.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate that. Next up, we have Nancy, who owns Meze Bistro in Williamstown. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about the employee retention and issues with maintaining employees during the pandemic.
You're muted, Nancy.
I said hi and thank you all for including me in today's discussion. Hospitality obviously has been hit in a very particular way, as people cannot eat with masks on and drink, etc. And it required a full shutdown in the beginning. So I think that our restaurants and teams had to learn very quickly on all the ways that we were going to pivot to keep ourselves safe as well as the guests safe. Meze did many things in the beginning of March 2020. I feel like we took a little bit of extra time to learn, maybe a month before we decided some of the best ways that we could continue to operate and continue to employ people and how that was going to work. We were running on a skeletal crew in the early 2020 of May, and really started like everyone else did with takeout, which became a brand new vehicle for us. We had never really approached it in the way that we needed to with COVID. And then we, moved forward as everyone did. We added back some outdoor dining. We created new dining in the landscape and to do like a burger stand. And then we, moved again in the fall of 2020. We were lucky enough to be able to put in 2 air filtration systems into the Meze footprint. And we're very lucky also to have quite a large footprint. So we found that like all this pivoting and moving that we needed to take care of, kind of creating some structure that you could count on. So we never put our tables back. We remained still with very large amounts of space. This helps our staff feel more comfortable. I think it helps our guest experience feel more comfortable. We went during this whole time now, 2 years into it, I think we've worn our masks except for 2 weeks last July. We looked at taking those masks off. And we went right back to wearing the mask in the kitchen and in the front of the house. And those things were we really listened to our team and decide like, how do we feel most safe and how do we feel that we are keeping our guests most safe? We find that most of the people who want to come to restaurants and join hospitality in some way really feel more comfortable when we continue to participate and then when we continue to wear our masks. So that's just made it easier for us to not be changing and pivoting constantly. It's made the team feel more confident in continuing service. We've had to learn a lot of things about, Meze for 23 years was a 7-day-a-week operation. We're now a 5-day-a-week operation. And just to get to the point about employees and employee retention, I think there's been so much conversation in hospitality about whether it's the landscape of if we've done a good job of paying a living wage and sick time and time off, et cetera. I think that maybe if there's an upshot to a pandemic, it's given us space and broadened the opportunity for those conversations to improve the quality of life, quality of work experience, which has really been a tremendous opportunity as we navigate these things. Our guests are getting this amazing education about the hospitality industry as a whole and about a pandemic happening at the same time. And it's just unpacked so many difficult conversations about hospitality and the lifestyle of hospitality, which then goes into our employees deciding like, are they going to be sticking in the industry or do they want to make a departure? And as you've seen in the news, there are many, many people making departures from our industry. And again, we try to learn like most efficient models of, what's good for the staff, the team, it's good for the guest, what's good for the business plan, because we have to be self-sustaining. And those questions of sustainability, I have found to be most important and most kind of biggest upshot creative swing to being in the midst of a pandemic. I think we have improved our workforce opportunity. There's also a few other things I wanted to mention that we can talk about, opportunities for everyone in Berkshire County. And one of the things that I find is happening more than ever is that I'm collaborating with more restaurants and talking about our employees and talking about safety and talking about, do you have enough employees? How do we help each other? That's been wildly beneficial, just to be there for one another and create closeness and community. Also, I'm on the advisory board of the Berkshire Community College now, that has gotten some workforce funding via grants for hospitality specifically. There's some new, they got a great big grant to renovate their kitchens. So people who may want to get some basic training to, or you want to invest in some of your current employees for more skill sets, there's some free education that will be in the spring semester and the upcoming 2021 or 2022, 2023 year. That's some free educational opportunity. They have gotten a grant for all of us who our staff needs to be serve safe and allergen safe and alcohol serve safe awareness. There's some free testing that you can send your employees to. We've been reading a bit about how to retain and keep our employees, and money wasn't number one, and money was actually number 3 on the list. And number 1 was the investment in education and training and the reciprocal investment into hospitality employment. So I think that there's lots of conversations and collaboration, and to use our community colleges to service assisting people who want to stay and remain in hospitality, like how we retain their employment. I do feel reciprocity is huge. And then how the steps you take to navigate pandemic to hopefully the endemic stage soon, that we can make sure that they understand that they're a high priority and not disposable employees, obviously, and that they are in the guest experience are equally at the top of the ideas of how we create good hospitality businesses for our county and for the future. So I'm going to leave it there, and I thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Next up, we have Billy Egan. Billy is a proprietor of Eli's Mile High Club in Oakland, California. I specifically dragged Billy into this conversation because he's been doing a stellar job with marketing and creating community during the pandemic. He's also been utilizing Patreon to maintain his supporters. So I'm looking forward to hearing about all of that. And I'll put actually the link, there's some links in the chat currently, and I'll also put a link to Eli's Instagram page in the chat. All right, take it away.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, so I'm Billy. I own and operate Eli's here in Oakland. We had a lot of, changing situations and branding and other sort of like survival lessons and things like that going forward. But I guess I could talk about my experience of just owning Eli's as a music venue and a large bar and restaurant with a big back patio. So it's so many multifaceted things. So I had to kind of deal with like what a restaurant deals with, what a music venue, which is an entirely different animal, just because, the entire point of a music venue is getting as many people as possible in a closed, tight space, which is the opposite of what this thing was going on. When everything shut down, I had a pretty depressing 2 months back in March. In the same 3-day period, my wife told me she was pregnant, and then Gavin Newsom, our governor, shut down all the bars and restaurants, and I was in the middle of buying 2 places, and so I had to cancel all that. and come back and shut down. I have 3 other places in California that I had to then do a mass layoff, figure out products, figure out what we're going to do. Everyone thought it was going to last like 2 months. And, so yeah, in the period from probably when we were March till about August, I decided to sort of build our brand on Instagram, with a marketing kind of campaign that was designed to kind of, I don't know, be humorous and give Eli's a kind of a more human identity about a sardonic, kind of sarcastic view of things. And it got really popular. It was getting shared by, significant people and influencers. And, I think it grew about almost tenfold in the span of about 5 months. Along with that, we pivoted like everybody else to like some delivery thing or whatever. We ended up being the first real place in Oakland that kind of we had never done what's it called, like Grubhub or whatever you have back in Massachusetts, Caviar, those kind of gig driver delivery app stuff. We had never done that before. And so I, like everyone else, jumped on that, saw that it was a 30% cut that they were taking. So I went really fast, coded my own website along with my POS, and just made my own delivery app. We also, in order to keep the venue staff kind of occupied, we built a Patreon page. We were one of the first places to have a live sort of music feed of different live bands and things like that was posted on Patreon that ended up getting a pretty good amount of followers and was kind of paying for itself for a while there. I spoke to a bunch of my vendors, my liquor reps, my beer reps. I was able to get sponsorship for that to buy like $20,000 worth of camera and sound equipment to do live audio recordings and fees and all the sort of staffing involved. There was a big music festival here called Harley Strictly Bluegrass that awarded us a grant of about $50,000 because of the Patreon page. So we had done a lot of, staying agile, survival instinct stuff for a while. When everything kind of started to reopen in the beginning of 2020, we waited about a week after the vaccine started rolling out just for healthcare and the elderly here in California. And all the guidance from all our local county and state and city kind of dried up. They were constantly messaging us throughout 2020 and all that stuff, but coming 2021, it all kind of dried up. Once the vaccine was out there, they kind of just like disappeared and left it up to us to figure out what the policy was. And we really didn't know what to do. And I decided to just go vaccinated only. We're going to open up for shows, because we had one meeting with our public health commissioner in the county, and they kind of winked at me in this meeting with a bunch of venue owners and, said like, if everyone is vaccinated in your space, you could do whatever you want. And all the rest of the venue owners thought it was a terrible idea, that you're going to get sued. They didn't know the legalities of, whatever that was at the time, but I just didn't care. I did it. I ended up becoming the first, one of the first music venues in California to reopen vaccinated only, which has then been copied all over the place. I was doing consulting with other venues on processes and how to do that. So that was kind of our sort of thing. We ended up being able to turn a profit actually through the summer and the fall of 2020, which is really surprising. We didn't really think we would do that. But as Omicron hit pretty hard, we've just decided to close for a month, paid my staff for a month, and we're doing some construction right now on the place here in Oakland. And yeah, that's it. I think, is that it? That's it. Questions?
Yeah, thank you, Billy. So now we're going to open it up to questions. Feel free to raise your hand, or if you're chomping at the bit, go ahead and ask.
Billy, you had mentioned when we talked before about their use of wastewater, the city or the county's wastewater viral load testing as a metric you'd use to try to decide to close because of Omicron. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. That's been, recently with Omicron, that started happening with San Francisco and the East Bay, San Francisco area. They started reporting the concentration levels in our wastewater, which was a lot more accurate than, who's reporting that they got sick, who's actually getting tested, all that stuff.
Yeah, because Pittsfield does it here, but they do it weekly, so it's not that granular.
Right. Yeah, I think they were at a 72-hour turnaround.
Yeah, but Boston does it daily, I think. But
oh, really? I think San Francisco does it daily, and then the East Bay, since we're not a real city here in Oakland, they do it every 72 hours.
So everyone else who's a brick and mortar here, I'm just curious, what types of metrics do you use to sort of make decisions as to whether or not you should be open, or maybe you go to delivery only, or sort of like kind of what makes you like make those types of decisions? Nobody?
there's a question in the chat, Nico.
Oh, is it the questions about resistance from employees? From Barbara?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have any of the employers requiring employees to be vaccinated encountered resistance? How do you handle that?
I don't know. We're like a sort of like a known as like a hardcore and punk and other music venue. My staff are all pretty on board with everything. I didn't have any kind of resistance whatsoever. We did require all the artists that we were booking to be vaccinated. And we got some resistance from people, mostly because people were touring from other parts of the country and, had different, whatever their sort of their politics were. Like, we just told them to stay home. I did get a lot of hate mail from around the country because it was on the news when we first did the vaccinated only. So that was cool. Got a lot of awesome death threats and stuff. Mostly from Indiana.
I had a couple of employees that didn't want to vaccinate for personal reasons, and I asked, we always wear our masks. I asked them that if they would, especially during Omicron, because I felt that it was so highly contagious, and that one of them decided to take a break and not work for a while, and that was their choice. And I asked that if they would test, so if they only, these are part-time employees, so that they would have to test prior to coming into the restaurant to work. I take employment pretty seriously. I'm sure we all here do, that they still need to earn a living, etc. So that is what the decision was. So I think I, lost one, and one would test with me. And so we would check the test and make sure that I could say there was a negative test involved before they came back in.
I will just add, in addition to what Nancy is saying, But I think it's really important to make sure that you establish very clear guidelines if you are requiring vaccinations for what you consider reasonable accommodation for those who prefer not to get vaccinated due to personal or medical reasons. So what can you accommodate for them to do as a part of their job? Are they still able to perform their full job? And are you going to offer a different form of requirement, such as testing on a weekly basis and mask wearing? And that for all of you to know that that is perfectly legal for you to require testing on a regular basis, and that you are required to, provide wages for the time spent testing if you're doing it during work hours or requiring it to be at a specific location. But I think being very clear in your guidelines, if you are offering requirement for vaccination in preparation for those who may be resistant, to just establish what your protocols are for unvaccinated employees.
And the other thing, I've done some work with different employers, one in South County, a national firm, and so talked to other people about this. I think the attitude for employers to take that is most productive is not, here's our box of guidelines, and if you don't meet it, you're out. Either you're in testing, or you're going to get fired, or if you don't meet the criteria. You want to have a conversation with the people, find out why they're resistant, why they're hesitant. Governor Baker, when the state requirements went in, had a very good statement, and he basically he was asked at the press conference, what are you going to do with those 1,400 or 14,000, I can't remember what the number was, employees who haven't gotten vaccinated by the deadline? And his response was, well, we want to know why. Ask them why. And this morning I was just talking to some people about people who are just afraid of needles as a reason they didn't want to get vaccinated. So I'd encourage that kind of a collaborative and engaging process rather than a strict line in the sand, whether it's, if there is an accommodation.
Amy had a question about the protocol for people who are in quarantine for 10 days and still test positive, and asking if they can come back to work or how to communicate that with customers. I guess, Amy, my first question for you would be, is that person vaccinated or not? Because that's going to make a big difference in terms of testing and test results. And if you even need to require testing, if you should have them test, if they are if they are vaccinated, then you're going to want to start to refer to the guidelines about symptoms, because, and I'm sure Michael may be able to speak to this more fluently, but someone with COVID-19 may continue to show the virus in their, body for quite some time, even after they stop being symptomatic or able to spread the virus. So that's really important to note, especially when you're dealing with vaccinated employees, giving them guidelines based on specifically on symptoms in addition to testing.
Yeah, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated is a crucial thing. And of course, it's also whether or not they're continuing to have symptoms or not. People who've got symptoms are probably going to be more infectious than people who have no symptoms. But again, we've been in this for almost 2 years, and a lot more is being learned as we go along. But I would encourage people to check with their local doctors or health departments as well to see how any guidance on that might continue to change over time. And I think it would also depend on what's their job. Are they, a waiter in a restaurant or a bartender in a restaurant that's going to be interacting face to face, or are they, the accountant in their own office doing, the paperwork and can be completely isolated for another week or two, and those kinds of things make a difference.
And your question, Amy, about communicating with customers, can you just specify what you mean by that? Do you mean communicating to your customers about your employee's positive case or something else?
Yeah, no, my concern is I'm talking with a business owner who is a hair salon, runs a hair salon, and she just came out of 10 days of isolation, and now she's trying to rebook her appointments and communicate with her employees. And I'm just wondering what other people's experience is in managing that conversation, and making people feel safe that they can come back, and when can they come back? Because I think many businesses are struggling with so many employees and customers who have COVID. How do they navigate that conversation?
Right. I know it's really tough, and it seems like the guidelines are always changing, which is why we want to start from square one about vaccination with employees, because it offers a little bit more of a breath of confidence when we speak about the amount of time they should spend in isolation or quarantine, and if they should get tested. I would recommend to make sure that all employees are wearing masks no matter what throughout this time, even if they are vaccinated, and especially if they've had exposure or have had tested positive and since come back to work. It's a way of assuring that you feel comfortable working in the same environment and space around them.
Yeah, Emily, the wearing of masks by the employees is a signal to the customers about how the business is addressing things and their perspectives. And Rye put something in the chat. I don't know, Rye, if you want to unmute, about your experience. No, you don't. Okay. But apparently had somebody in your business and your philosophy, even if they're positive after 10 days. Rye also quoted the CDC guidelines, but I will note those CDC guidelines are continuing to evolve. And I know that's a huge challenge. And I like the CDC, but it's been a problem.
I would certainly agree with that. And actually, I think that there probably are cases of virus still being identified in the respiratory tract after it is no longer infectious. So that would seem really anxiety producing to me if I were in that situation. And I think I would worry, or I think I would ask first about the vaccination status and booster status of that employee before I made a decision to let them come back, but I would be cautious about that.
And without getting too weedy, there is a difference between testing positive on a rapid antigen test and a PCR test in the perspective as to whether somebody's still infectious.
Yeah.
But I won't get into the weeds on that. So.
So I wanted to swing back to marketing a bit, and sort of how, the brick and mortars here, how you communicate with, with your community about, things that are changing in your business, whether it's you're changing hours or, if a staff member does test positive, how you communicate that with the public. So if anyone wants to jump in.
Oh, I mean, I don't know how it works in Western Massachusetts, but we've had for the last since Delta, actually, I think there's been here in Oakland or in the Bay Area, every county's done. There's been vax mandate to get in any business that's not a library, or library is not a business, but library or medical office. So vaccine must be provided or approved at the door everywhere now, and masks are required everywhere as well. And so yeah, when places close right now, they just close for the whole day or 2 days, and everyone kind of understands it's not really a mystery, or I don't know, it's kind of a more normal thing here. So I don't really know how to do that. As far as marketing, I started like communicating a lot with people in a very like, as if the bar was a person that was constantly posting on Instagram or was like hopelessly addicted to it. And it got people to it was a really effective way of communicating information from day to day to people. And I saw it start to be super, have like an effect. Like when I said we're closed or we had to close for some dumb reason, people wouldn't really show up. We wouldn't have people knocking on the door all night trying to get in. And when I said we're open, we'd have a huge surge of people coming in. So yeah, it became a very tangible effect via Instagram, just because, you know, our clientele was the ones that used that mainly.
I think it's important to speak to giving businesses the opportunity to update maybe just one place for information that's changing all the time. We know that you guys have Google profiles and websites and Instagrams and Facebook, and it may be worthwhile to implement a clear message on your sites that says, for information on our current hours or our current operating structure, please see our Facebook or our Instagram. At Tourists, what we do on our Instagram page is we keep a story highlight at the top of the page that is called COVID policies. And it's something that can be always updated and kind of easily edited and lives right at the top of the page, so that anyone visiting the Instagram page can click there and see what's currently happening for COVID policies. And then in addition, we do have that separate website that are meant for guests who will be checking into the hotel. And that's one place that all guests are directed to. It's actually a separate page from the main website. And that way we can keep it updated consistently, take it away when it's no longer necessary, and point anyone looking for information on the operating standards to that one site address.
Nancy, I'm curious about how successful you've been with using Meze's newsletters, because I get those pretty frequently. So I'm curious how that communication strategy has been for the restaurant and the customers.
Well, yesterday when we were kind of rambling through some of the talking points, in our region or in the Berkshires, we have a lot of various demographics of folks who use different means of communication. So communication in hospitality starts on, whether it's in your parking lot, on the telephone, or on your website or your social media. And we really, and our weekly email, we try to come at all of it. And so if we recently reduced our days that were open, we discontinued Sunday during the Omicron time, just to kind of have a little bit. We have 4 days on and 3 days off, and it was helpful to our team, and we had less team, et cetera. And it's just like you all say, you're operating a small business, but you have to go in and update Google, and you have to update your Instagram, which then feeds your Facebook, which then updates your website, and you have to go in and fix all those things quickly. Hopefully you have a bullet list of where you are and a person to assist in doing that. But our email blast really speaks to our regular hometown folks, and maybe beyond that, which I'm grateful for. But we find that, email is kind of a direct hit into Williamstown, North Adams community. And then Instagram is for a younger demographic. That rolls into Facebook, which maybe is an older and more business community demographic, which rolls into LinkedIn, which rolls into our Twitter feed. Like, we try to use a service that you post once and it is spread out through everything. And then when we want to have more content, we use the weekly email and update everything. But it is definitely something you have to be on top of all the time. This is the time we live in. it's changes a lot, which is why we try really hard to make less changes as possible, which has not been easy during a pandemic. So in winter, we're back to 4 days, and then hopefully, come April, I think we'll be able to go back to 5, but you have to tell everybody. So it's tricky. And you need to use every resource that you have, especially those for small businesses that are relatively free, like your Google updates, your Instagram, your Facebook. Like social media is your pirate free way to communicate, but you have to use a lot of different ones because there's a lot of different demographics visiting our restaurants that use different tools.
Yeah, I was going to say almost exactly that.
Yeah.
Pick your platform and just dive into that one.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I've been telling people.
Yeah.
So Billy, one thing you've done really great with your social media presence is build community. So I was wondering if you had any tips on how a business can build community around their social media.
Yeah, I mean, it really helped us that, we're already kind of a music venue, and we're all, we kind of, it's really easy for us to create a kind of a cultural scene around us. So I would say if I had a business that didn't already kind of have that, or didn't have that element in it that made it easier, I don't know. I would do just like they said, I would pick a social media platform that I think my sort of general clientele demographic is, and then I'd dive into that and kind of like communicate with people in a very personal, and try to be funny, try to personify your business as a person. What kind of person would your business be if they were a person? And what kind of person does your clientele want to sort of spend their time with, i.e. their money with, in that way, and pay attention to what your clientele generally would be into and be concerned with, or, find funny or interesting and things like that. And so sort of regurgitate that back at them. I spent a lot of time kind of like paying attention to what, 25-year-olds are into around me that come to my place, and they kind of spitting it back at them via our social medias.
One of the things I like that is being said is that, like, how do you communicate? And you're talking about the being human. I think that with our emails, I'm reminded that, like, we tried so hard to be as transparent and as we can. We actually had more clear conversation of like, this is hard, or, we're going to have to close for 10 days and here's why. And then here's how we're going to reopen. Like, we're trying to unpack more of the communication style as just an ongoing business in the community to our community, and say, these are tough and trying times. And I think everybody connects and understanding that. And then saying, as a business, I said to someone who didn't want to vaccinate and didn't want to test, that I appreciated the ability to have the conversation. That was a private conversation, but that we definitely need to, like, I have to make the best decisions I can for everyone and for the broader picture. And then when we get into our email, I try to tell people, like, these are tough decisions we're making, and thank you for sticking with me. And just keeping it real and transparent seems to be a model that that is being allowed more than ever during a pandemic, which I'm another thing I'm grateful for. There's some weird things on the flip side of this that I say, wow, this is actually better. This is improving our communications.
Yeah, it really has. It's funny. I find being really like bold too. If everyone around you is saying, posting this or communicating the same thing of like, this is hard or whatever, you know what I mean? To have a kind of like a fresher kind of take on things, or I would say, I don't know, not that kind of like depressing thing, because everyone's just constantly in it. We're all in this depressing thing. I don't know.
Well, I know
I once did a week of posting about how actually this is good. We like this. We hope this lasts forever. And people like really responded to it positively.
Yeah, well, I think what you're talking about being real, Billy, is good because there was the phenomenon of Facebook depression because everybody thought that everybody else's lives were so perfect because people only posted the good things on Facebook or any of the other social media things. So I think there is that utility of sharing the angst that other people, knowing that other people are in the same boat.
Yeah, I mean, now it's like cliche to have a conversation with somebody and they go like, ooh, how are you doing in this? And you're like, it's been like 2 years. Don't talk to me about this. Don't ask me how the pandemic's been for me.
There is the fatigue and malaise factor, which is actually something that I and public health people I talked to were concerned about, is that there is a segment of the population that is just kind of, maybe they've even gotten vaccinated, whatever, but they're just in business, and it's some business people in the business community, they just want to go back to being completely normal and like we're over it, we're done with it. I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to think about it anymore. And that's a bit of a concern.
Sometimes when I get like random hate mail from people going, we hope your business closes because of like the vaccinated only stance and all this other things, I usually tell them like, actually, I hate this way more on a different level than you do. Like, you don't even understand how much I actually hate having to tell everyone to put their mask on and to have a bottleneck at my door to get into my business because everyone has to go through a whole checkpoint. Like, I hate this on a level that you don't even understand. And they don't know what to, they don't know what to say to me.
Well, we are a little over our time, but I wanted to basically throw out the last question. What can the chamber do to support your business? A little plug, we offer one-on-one business consultation. So, if you need help with marketing, maybe going over your financials, you just need to either sit in a room with another human or Zoom for an hour just to vent about what's going on with your business. We're here for you. But is there anything just off the top of your head, like a service you could see being useful, or perhaps another panel that might address something that you're concerned about? All right, well, I will leave my email in the chat, and if anything comes up, feel free to reach out to us.
Well, thank you for organizing.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you. And support local business.
Yeah, thank you for all coming out today. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the panel for taking time out of your day to talk about this. We really do appreciate it. And again, feel free to reach out to us if anything comes up.